Everyone, we have about a half a battery, so I think we can make it through here with this microphone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. How many of you are interested in living in a tiny house? Wow. How many of you are going to build your own? How many are going to have it built? All right. How many is going to be on wheels? How many is going to be on foundations? We're going to talk about all of that stuff today. So, my name is Robin Butler, and about 3 years ago, we were building tiny houses and giving them away to single mom and veterans and that kind of thing, and we realized that there really wasn't any building codes to adhere to, and it was kind of like the wild, wild west out there. You could build to whatever you wanted to build to. And my concern was most builders were great. You know, they were general contractors, and they would go out there and they would build a great product. But my concern was that somebody's going to build something that's going to blow off going down the road, hurt somebody, and then all of a sudden the government's going to step in and squash the whole industry. And I just didn't want that to happen because I believe in smaller and minimalists and less is more and all those things. So we looked around, we couldn't find anybody. RVIA was getting ready to pull out of the tiny house, and there was nobody else doing it. So we started NOAH, National Organization of Alternative Housing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our company throughout the slides, but we're not here to talk about NOAH other than any questions that you guys might have. Really what I want to tell you about is the tiny house industry and living safely and securely in a tiny house. So if you guys will hang on to your seats, like I said, if you could hold your questions until the end of the slideshow. I'm going to try to run through the slides really fast so that we can have a lot of time for questions and answers. Then that's where we'll go with this. So, all right, in 1950, the size of a tiny house was about less than 1,000 square feet. And it cost $7,354, which equates to about a $44,000 house in today's market. Family size was about 3.37. When this survey was done in 2016, average size was 2,500, cost at $236,000, and the family size had shrunk down to 2.5. So houses were getting bigger, families were getting smaller. And then we had this thing called the Great Recession. Anybody remember the Great Recession? How many cannot remember that? Wow, I was building houses like crazy, and all of a sudden, the bottom dropped out of the whole thing. It was crazy. And then mom and dad started moving in with the kids, or the kids were moving in with mom and dad. And then this guy by the name of Jay Schaefer showed up on the radar. And this guy was living in a little 98 square foot tiny house. And people started thinking, wow, that's cool. I could probably do that. And even though tiny houses were being built before Jay Schaefer, he was the one that really brought it onto the forefront onto social media. So we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like.
Dave Ramsey.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And I rebel against that. I don't like that. I'm contrary to that. You know, our college kids get into college, first thing they do is they give them a credit card. They don't have any credit, but they give them a credit card. And if they use it, they give them a second credit card. What's with that? You know what the average college student debt is? Anybody know?
250,000?
37,000. But it's in the billions when you total it all up. It's crazy. So, what are some benefits of going tiny? That's audience participation. What are some benefits of going tiny? Yes? Less money? Okay. All right. A lot of people do that. Portability. Yeah. Less what? Cleaning. Yeah, absolutely. You know, our little house, it's only 155 square feet. 15 minutes, things all clean. You know, it's really fun.
Less things.
Less stuff, yeah, less things.
Yeah.
Forces you.
Mobility, moving around. Was that yours? Yeah, accumulation of stuff, yeah. Self-reliance, yeah. And you know, there's something to be said. When you see these people, they say, I love my tiny house. I love, they're talking from their heart. They really do like downsizing and being able to live in smaller spaces and have their life back. It's really, really great. Well, I wrote a few of them down. So, with the American dream has become a nightmare. Can anybody tell me who the Joneses are? I've been told all my life, you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to have a big boat and a big car and a big house to keep up with the Joneses. I've never met the Joneses. Who the heck are they? So, and then how many rooms do you need? When the kids move out, you need a dining room, you need a bathroom, you need a place to sleep. What about all the other bedrooms? All the rest of it, you still got to pay for it. You got to heat and cool it, you know? Come on. So, less is more. You have less maintenance, more free time. Our utility bill in our tiny house is $25 a month. No mortgage. 68% of the people that own tiny houses have no mortgage, and we'll talk a little bit later about financing and how that all works. A smaller footprint. You know, a lot of people, they could afford a bigger house, but they want a smaller impact on the planet, less of an impact on the trees and on the utilities and on the fossil fuel and everything. And you get that with a smaller house. And then living debt-free.
Amen.
So, we got our guys together, and I said, our team, and I said, give me 2 sentences on why does NOAH exist? Because I really wanted everybody to be on the same page when we started moving forward with this company. And we had a lot of great ideas, and basically it came down to promoting freedom to live. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here. We want to promote freedom to live. We want to have peace of mind, and NOAH clears the path to insurance, to placement, and to lending. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about a little bit, is all of those things later on, especially in the question and answer time. So, freedom to live where I want to live, how I want to live, in a safe home. NOAH's a third-party inspection company. We inspect each and every tiny house. That's important. Write that down. Each and every tiny house. We're the only people that do each and every tiny house. And inspect it like a site-built home. We do inspections using live stream inspections, so our inspectors can be in Missouri, Florida, or whatever. This is all unique, guys. We're using high-tech stuff. And it's digitized and stored for lenders and placements and insurance. So who wants a tiny house? We already had some hands raised. What type of people like tiny houses? Well, somebody said affordable. Who said affordable? The millennials. You know, it's amazing, these millennials that have all this student debt, buying a tiny house is more like buying a car than it is buying a house to them. The homeless, there's a lot of municipalities that are looking at the veterans and the homeless as a possibility. College students, you know, there's colleges out there like SCAD, Savannah College of Arts and Design. They have 3 tiny houses in their parking garage that they use for dorms, you know? So that's another possibility. Traveling and medical professionals, these nurses that move every 13 weeks, it's perfect for what they do. And the military, Eglin Air Force Base came and said, you know, there's RV parks in every base. So it would be nice and less stress on the family to be able to take their house with them whenever they get transferred. Corporate and temporary housing and vacation homes. Guys, even if you don't like tiny houses, you have to have 13 pairs of shoes instead of 3. This vacation home thing is incredible. Airbnb is going crazy with these tiny houses. Go out and buy some tiny houses, put them in an RV park in the mountains and by the ocean, someplace kind of neat, and rent them out. We had ours in an RV park near Legoland, and it rented out for $95 a night, 20 to 22 nights out of a month. It's great. And that wasn't a super duper place, but it still rented out for all of that. So, I'm sorry? Oh yeah, the aging, the people that are on fixed income, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine? We're building some tiny house villages, and I know some people that I'm not doing it, but they're building tiny house villages for independent living facilities. They have the center core, which is the kitchen and the laundry facilities, eating facility, and a sitting area, and then they have 6 tiny houses around each village that has a bedroom and a bath. Perfect for the elderly. $500 a month. Can you imagine? I know of an assisted living guy, and he said this is a little bit more. Assisted living is different from independent living, but he charges $6,000 a month for the assisted living. So anyway, so if it's good for the aging population. Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, what's an RV? A park model RV. I should have asked you guys because you already know all of this, and I get all the neat questions, but I'll just go through it because I'm trying to rush through the slides so we have time at the end. Less than 400 square feet, has to be on wheels. The size limit to be able to tow it on the road without a special use permit, 8'6", 13.6 high. If it's not, it's a park model RV. That's the main difference between an RV and a park model RV. No need for a special use permit, and easily transported and set up. And what the code says, basically, one person can set it up in a day or take it down in a day. That's the definition. All right, and now this slide is one you want to take a picture of if you haven't taken any pictures, because here we're going to talk about the codes. And we're going to talk about the AHJ. Anybody know what that stands for? It's called the authority having jurisdiction. There's this guy out there, he's called the authority having jurisdiction, and we'll tell him who that is. But anyway, it's important to remember that part. But we do National Electric Code, the RV Code, which is NFPA 1192, Park Model RV Code is ANSI 119.5. And so whenever you're doing an RV, that's what you have. What NOAA does is they add some construction guidelines to that. 140 mile an hour wind loads, 50 pounds per square foot snow loads. R13 in the walls in RV code says R5. R19 in the ceilings, double insulated windows. So you can find the NOAA standard on our website if you want to know what that is. So because we add these structural standards and energy efficiency standards to the code, we say it's more suitable for full-time habitation, and that's important to the municipalities, to the authority having jurisdiction. So how do you build a tiny house? Just want to talk a little bit about a trailer. I get this all the time. Can I tear the top? I've got an old RV. I want to tear the top off this old RV, and I want to build my tiny house on top of that. No. Absolutely no. Tiny houses weigh more than RVs. They use little thin 1.5-inch walls with 2x2s and aluminum's on the outside. And no, the axles are much too small. Well, how about a car hauler? No, you can use a car hauler. It will support the weight, but here's the deal. With a car hauler, it's designed to carry the load in the middle, so they beef up the cross members that are in the middle to support a car, whereas on a house, you're going to support the weight on the perimeter. So I encourage you, please, if you're going to do it yourself, or if you're buying one from a builder, just make sure they have a trailer that is specifically designed for a tiny house on wheels. And the other thing I want to say about trailers is in the ANSI code for the park model RV, it specifies a certain trailer. It's got an 8-inch I-beam, it's got 1.5-inch cross members, it's got these special axles. It basically puts that thing up about 28 inches tall. And with these tiny houses, with a loft, you're always fighting that loft size. So, but there is an exception, and we use that exception in our inspections of the park model RVs that are, because a lot of people say, look, I'm only going to move this thing once or twice. I'll pay the special use permit. I want 10 feet wide. I want little bit wider than the 8'6". And they want to go to the ANSI code, which is great, which is fine, except for the trailer. And so there is an exception in there. If you get your trailer engineered, like Trailer Mates are all engineered, get your trailers engineered, and then we will go ahead and let you use an engineered trailer in lieu of what they have in ANSI 119.5, and that's in the code. And the other thing you might want to know is in National Electric Code, it's Article 551 for RVs and Article 552 for park lots. All right. So, NOAA does not inspect tiny houses as modulars or factory-built housing. You got that? NOAA does not, at this time, if it makes sense, if the authorities say yes to that, then we'll move to that. However, that adds $15,000 to your cost, only because of the inspector. With a factory-built housing, it's all state-run. You get an insignia, you build to the state code, but they require this guy who's an engineer he's got an engineer's license for structural, plans review, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and 4 years experience. Most of them have all of this. And he has to physically go out to your plant where you're building tiny houses at the various stages of construction. So the same house built to ANSI code right here, modular built to the same house, built to the same structure. This one costs $15,000 more because of that. So hopefully we won't go that way, but if it does, then you have to have engineered plans, you engineer your trailer, which you should do anyway, and then we have an engineered fixed foundation, and here's some of the foundation ways that you can put a foundation in. Just tie it down like you would a manufactured home, and now you have an engineered foundation. So that's a dwelling. Now, the difference is RV or dwelling. RVs on the federal level are not allowed to be lived in full-time, although 12 million people live in RVs, so they can be lived in. And it's up to the authority having jurisdiction, which I'll show you who that is in a minute, whether they're going to allow it or not to be lived in full-time. All right, if you're going to do dwellings, then you're going to deal with the zoning department, the building department, the health department, utilities, fire and safety, and transportation, because you're going to be pulling out on the roads. These are some of the departments that you're going to deal with, instead of just a third-party inspector like NOAA. Where are you going to put it? That may make a difference of what you're going to build. RV park, mobile home park, ADU is an accessory dwelling unit or granny flat that goes in your side yard or your backyard, or on residential property that's zoned for tiny houses. And there are some counties that are now allowing, Alachua County says you can put a tiny house as long as it's on a permanent foundation. That's Alachua County, Florida. As long as it's on a permanent foundation, you can put it on any place you can put a house, any residential property. Fresno, California, you can put it in your side yard or your backyard as long as you have a house, and you have to either live in the main house or the ADU, and you have to have at least 6,600 square feet. So they're starting to allow that. So here's the authority having jurisdiction. It could be the building official, it could be a public safety official, it could be the government, like the commanding officer on a base, it could be an insurance company, like Foremost Insurance or Progressive, or a property owner could be. We have some property owners that are only allowing NOAA certifieds on it, but they have authority to say yes or no to certain things. So those are the authority having jurisdictions. The main one that we're going to be concerned about here in this area are the building officials and the zoning officials, and you got to do both. You know, we're gonna inspect the house and make sure that it's built correctly and all that. However, you still need to place it somewhere, and that's zoning. They're going to tell you things like setbacks and square footage sizes and all that. So we already talked about what is a tiny house on wheels. So let's talk about financing. Yes, sir.
On the zoning side, what are the policy considerations for saying tiny homes aren't appropriate?
Okay, on the zoning side, what are the policy considerations to say tiny houses are not appropriate? The municipalities are confused about what a tiny house is. That's the biggest problem. They don't know what the heck is a tiny house. Then they have the property owners that say, I don't want a tiny house next to me. That's going to bring my property values down. So we're dealing with all of those nuances, and hopefully, there's, the American Tiny House Association, I'll put a plug in for them. They're working with some of the cities to get them in as accessory dwelling units, which almost all cities have accessory dwelling units ordinances on their books, but it's mainly for a caregiver once you can't care for yourself, and it's only for temporary, but all they have to do is change it and say, yeah, it doesn't have to be a caregiver, and it doesn't have to be, it can be on wheels. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, well, it's square footage, yes. The question is most counties, most zoning are, no, I can't say no, most. Some zoning requires square footages. Now, I have built a 240 square foot tiny house on foundations, the smallest one I've ever built, with permits, because zoning said we don't have any square footage restriction for R2. R1 was 1,000 square feet, R2, R3, and R4. So you have to check with your different cities and counties and see what the zoning is. Yes? Okay, the question is because they're so confused, is it better to find out where you want to put it before you decide what you're going to do? I can't tell you. Because in the past, it was, I'm going to ask forgiveness instead of permission. And they put their tiny house in the side yard and the backyard, and as long as the neighbors didn't complain, they lived there. And there's a lot of people doing that right now. However, as soon as someone complains, the code enforcement guy comes out, he says, no, can't do it. So, yes, and here's, this is my recommendation. I would go to wherever you want to put it and say, I got a problem. Start with the lower people, not with the county commissioners and city commissioners. Start with the building department and the zoning department. There's people in there, and get buy-in from them. And say, look, me and my husband, we work 2 jobs each to pay for our mortgage, and we spend all of our weekends mowing the grass and trimming the bushes, and we're so tired of all this. And on our 2 kids, we don't have any time with them. We need to get our life back. Can you do anything for us? And then you get them saying, well, what did you have in mind? Well, I've been watching this HGTV. and you plant that seed, and you let them tell you how you can do it. That's how a lot of people are getting it in. But anyway, so we're going to do financing next. This has always been a challenge ever since we started. The first challenge was insurance. Still challenging is placement, and then different things started to come in for financing. Well, I just want to put a plug in for Koala Financial Group. This is a game changer, I believe. Started August the 1st, and it is for builders that will put these are manufacturers of tiny houses. This isn't for the do-it-yourselfer. Manufacturers of tiny houses can get approved through Koala Financial. Koala Financial will put a button on their website. The buyer clicks the button, fills out an application. 24 to 72 hours, they have a loan approval. And it's 5% down. It's credit score based. 6% is 750 or above. 15%, they'll go down to 600 credit score. They'll go up to $100,000 and out to 25 years. There is a 5-year prepayment penalty, so you at least have to keep it for 5 years. And there's a 3% you have to put 5% down, but there's a 3% charge that they roll into the loan for placing the loan. And then there's a $40 a month loan insurance in case you go down the road or something. But those are your loan charges. So I just want to give you this one, and then I'm going to give you a bunch of other ones that are on our I'm a Tiny Houser website. So if you don't already have an I'm a Tiny Houser sticker that my grandson started, that's where you'll find the financing, placement, and insurance for tiny houses. And so we have Koala at the top, but there's also Lightstream, which is for SunTrust. Most of these other guys are signature loans. They call them tiny house loans, but you either have to have collateral in your house or you have to have good credit in order to qualify for these loans. One Main Financial is another. Local community banks now, that's a really good source. Credit unions and local community banks are actually lending on tiny houses now. In fact, we've got one in the Northwest here that's checking us out, and we had to provide them some, and this is pretty cool, provide them with some resales. So we went to our builders and said, you got any resales? Since we have 2 builders, and they both had 2 resales, and all 4 of these increased in value. So that's a good point. That's exactly what the bank wanted to see. These are not depreciating houses. They're appreciating in value. One was sold for $59, $65, and then a third time for $69. So they are going up in value. And that's what the insurance company wanted to know, or the credit union wanted to know. Owner financing. If you talk to your builders, some of the builders will do some owner financing, maybe not all of it, but they'll do some. Private lending. You know, there's people out there with IRAs, and they would love to get 7-8% on their IRA or their savings account that they're getting 1 or 2% on. So if you have a family member or know of people, I know somebody that's pulling $1 million a month out in private lending. And then conventional mortgage. As soon as you put this thing on a property, you can go get your conventional mortgage on it. So that's another way to do it. So if you find a place that says, yeah, you can put it, you can tie it down, put it on a permanent foundation. As soon as they say permanent foundation, permanently hooked up to the utilities, boom, now you go to your lender and say, I got a home.
Yep.
All right. Here's a great resource. I just put this up here so you would know this. It came out in March of 2017. It was from NFPA, and they put a white paper out saying, here's how you apply building codes to tiny houses. IRC Appendix Q came in January 1. Every municipality has to say yes to it, but it is in International Residential Code right now for tiny houses on foundations. These aren't on wheels, but we are using Appendix Q for stair treads and ceiling heights in the kitchens and baths. It's down to 6'4" now. So those are some resources there. And here's some places that are allowing tiny houses in. Fresno, Lake Dallas, Texas is kind of interesting. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Guy went in to Lake Dallas, Texas, which is in the suburb of Dallas, Texas, and bought a 1-acre property with an old house on it and submitted to the commissioners and said, he drew up the plans, put 13 spots for tiny houses on there, landscaped it, parking, and they gave him the authority to put 13 tiny houses in there. He's working on getting building permits for that right now. So, thought is, take $1,000, go put it down on an acre, contingent upon getting building permits, or due diligence, or whatever you're going to say. Sorry, can you see that? And then, if they say yes, close on the deal. If they say no, get your $1,000 back. So, just a thought. And Dan Fitzpatrick of the American Tiny House Association is a great advocate in this area, mainly California, but he's all across here. And he said, look, if you're having trouble getting your tiny house in, call me. I will either come there, or I'll talk to them, or I'll work with them. So that's another good place to go for placement. All right. And here's something I wanted to point out. This is the Rockledge. It says, a tiny home shall be defined as a principal residential dwelling. That's key. Principal residential dwelling. There's it, and it's on wheels. A tiny house on wheels, they say, for the purpose of these guidelines is a structure which is intended as a full-time residence. That's key, guys. That started everything, all the municipalities starting to let these things in. And then the Lake Dallas, Texas says tiny houses are in the International Residential Code, and they're giving a certificate of occupancy, a CO, on tiny houses on wheels. In Lake Dallas, Texas, they had, he's just putting the hookups there, and he's got 13 of them, and he's got 77 applications already. A week after he got approval. It's what's happening. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I kind of rushed through it because I'm going to talk to you guys about it. But before I do, and before I talk about this slide, I wanted to bring Todd up here, if you would please, and he's going to talk to you about what's happening and what he's doing in the local Washington State area. Todd.
Hi folks, I know some of you. I run a tiny home meetup called Pierce County Tiny Homes here in Puyallup, Washington. And we've had some exciting things happening. We have been working with senators, House representatives, people, and county councilmen for Pierce County trying to get legalization. I was a builder, and in 2014 I built 7 houses and realized that I wouldn't be able to finance anybody, get investor money for what we were trying to do because they wanted to know where these were going to be placed legally. So one thing we did, we worked with a couple senators and a bunch of House representatives on passing House Bill 1085, which got passed last year, and we just had it signed off by our governor. But basically that removed the square footage ruling altogether for minimum floor. There was a question about minimum floor space requirement. So that got passed. That was one good step. But then I called Senator Zeiger up and I was like, hey, this has nothing to do with tiny homes on wheels, which is my biggest passion. I believe there was a major loophole there with the fact that we could place them legally on spaces without getting a permit. But then IRC federal code says you can only live in it for 120 days. So we ran up against that. Now, my friend Mark, he runs what's called tiny home loopholes. He found out that you can actually register for a recreational vehicle permit, which you can renew every 90 days, therefore allowing you to live in it legally. I don't like that, but it doesn't establish something, but it is something that costs you $15 you can actually do with Pierce County and actually live in an RV permanently and just apply for that. So what has come down the line now with Zeiger and a few other senators is two different legislation laws that they're trying to place. One is for village living, for a village to be started up, and a lot of tiny homes to be placed on property. And it kind of lists a bunch of things, including they have to have working toilets, how their hookups are, minimum space, basically